Hey, so this morning, by the way, it's awesome to have this room packed out, isn't it? And pretty decent weather out there. So this morning we are, with Purely Haiti, obviously we're thinking globally. And I think we're also aware that there is so much need in the world. And there's so much work to be done. And today I'm going to introduce you to some amazing people that are actually doing something completely not related to Haiti. But it's really, really cool. And I've been wanting to have them come and share with you. And Jen and I tried to figure out when it would work best. And we landed on this weekend. So a few months ago, I met a couple, young couple from Arlington, from up in Smoky Point. And they have 4 school-age, beautiful kids. And they, as a family, are moving to Cambodia. And they have decided to go and to serve some of the neediest of the needy. And they are going to Cambodia to serve, and this is where it gets interesting, to serve Vietnamese. Are they refugees or immigrants? Both. Okay, Vietnamese refugees and immigrants in Cambodia, people that are really, really struggling. So Brookview, for those of you that don't know, Brookview is part of something called the Christian and Missionary Alliance. And if you've taken the partnership class with us, you know all about that. But it includes a few thousand churches all over the U.S., and then it's broken into regions. And so we're in the Alliance Northwest, which is Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. And then the Alliance Northwest, also, if you've been a part of what we've been doing here for a while, you know that they have really come alongside of us to help us get into this building and purchase this building. And so it's been a big deal. And then within the Alliance Northwest, it breaks down even more. There's these things called networks, so smaller groups of churches that come together to work together. And we're a part of this thing called the North Sound Network. There are 6 churches, including the one from Smoky Point. And so the couple that you guys are going to meet today, the family that you're going to meet today, is from Smoky Point. And the lead pastor of their church has become a really good friend of mine over the last few years. And about a year ago, he started telling me about these guys, and he was so excited. And then I met him a few months ago, and I will tell you, they are awesome. So I asked them to come and to talk with you guys today. So would you please welcome Todd and Danielle Jorgenson? So I just want to give these guys a chance to get to know who you are a little bit. So before we get into the crazy stuff about Cambodia and moving there and relocating with your kids and all that, where did you guys grow up and how did you meet?
Well, I grew up in a small little town in eastern Washington called Tonasket.
How many of you know where Tonasket is? No.
What?
Really?
That's more than average. So
this is a
I'm
more than
impressed.
average church right here is
Yep.
what this is.
So grew up small little town. It was great. Loved it. Grew up in a Christian family, kind of a nominal family that we just attended church, didn't really talk about Jesus too much, but had a little bit of that background. And then once I went off to college, that's when I really discovered who Jesus was and what the gospel was. And
What college?
I went to University of Idaho.
What?
So, yep.
Beckman's, where are you? Oh.
So I went
They're
to
all the University of Idaho people are servants. That's what I know.
It's a great place. I loved it. So I loved my time at University of Idaho. I studied education and moved over here to immediately after graduating and started looking for jobs in this area and found a teaching job in Lake Stevens, where I've been since. I'll let Danielle share, and I'd like to hear what you say about how we met.
It's not that interesting. I grew up in Kirkland, and I have a family that faith and the gospel were a huge part of everything we did. My dad was in ministry most of my childhood, and we had refugees and pregnant teens living with us. And so that's a big part of my story. That's why I share it. And a big part of why I feel called to lost people in the world. And I did YWAM. That's a big part of when I was 18, Youth with a Mission. And so I spent 2 months in the Philippines, and that had a huge impact on my heart for the world and missions. And then I went to Northwest University now. It was Northwest College when I went there. And I got also a teaching degree. So in fact, our first year of marriage, we were both teaching second grade. So that made for interesting conversations. Todd got kind of tired of it. And then I taught in Lake Washington School District Elementary.
Okay.
And started staying home when we had kids. But we met, not anything too exciting, but through mutual friends that invited us, without letting us know that we were meeting each other, to a Mariners game. And so
Sweet.
the Mariners have a kind of a good memory, although Todd went last night and it did not deliver at all.
Okay, so you guys got married. What have you been doing? What has life looked like since you got married?
Well, ever since we got married, we both kind of had a heart for missions, and we had a heart for the orphan, and we started, I don't know, we were attending church, but we hadn't really started growing in our walk with God. But still during that time, we had a heart for missions, and we went on some trips to Nicaragua, did a couple trips to Ethiopia, and missions was important to us. So, but we still hadn't really grown, but it was probably 7-8 years ago is when we really started to grow in our faith and feel the call, but not only feel the call, but respond to that. And we started serving more and growing more, and God was really working in us, and we were just a lot more willing to just step out and answer that call that God gave to us. In the meantime, I was still teaching. I started teaching middle school math in Lake Stevens probably about 12 years ago. So I made that jump up from elementary, which was in some ways a good jump, but in some ways not. But one way we answered the call was I went on staff half-time with Children of the Nations, so a small ministry that does work in Africa and the Caribbean. So I started working with some schools in Malawi with Children of the Nations and did that for 4 years and really started to grow through that. It was challenging. We were fundraising and it was just a challenge, but a good opportunity for us to take our family and have a chance to serve overseas with them.
Yeah, so family-wise, because you didn't mention that, I think there's a picture maybe.
There is a picture. Look at these guys.
So we have an almost 11-year-old Isaac, almost 9 Ruby, Fisto just turned 8, and Luke is 6. And so a big part of what life in our family has been like is obviously adding a child through adoption. And so Fisto joined our family about 18 months ago from Burundi, Africa. And so that's a big part of kind of our journey for our family. So.
Yeah. And so you've been teaching. What have you been doing the last 6 or so
We
years?
homeschool. We have just for the last 4 years. And so I've been totally home. But before that, before we had 4 kids, when it made a little more sense, for childcare, I taught part-time in Lake Washington School District and then at a private school in Linwood.
Okay, cool. Were you going to say something else?
I'm good.
You okay? Okay, so you guys, imagine this: you got your kids, you're both teachers, you're homeschooling, you've added one that you've adopted, and then you decide to move to Cambodia with them. So, what do your kids think of this adventure?
Yeah, so our kids, God blessed us with some amazing children. They're very adaptable and willing to go, but still it's not easy for them. I think looking back, we had the opportunity to take them to Malawi 2 different times for 2 months at a time. So that was kind of a trial run at it and an opportunity to see how the kids would respond, and they loved it. They wanted to stay in Malawi and live there. And so that was just confirmation that we could do this. And God was working in our children as well. And it's not something that we just like plopped on our children and said, hey, we're gonna do this. It's something that we've been working with our children on and discipling them. We read a lot of missionary biographies. They're through YWAM. So for parents out there, definitely recommend start reading those. And it just helps your children to get an understanding of what missions is. And for them, they get it. They know why we're going, and they understand it. And so it's not God just telling us to go, but he's working in them as well. So they're handling it pretty well, but at the same time, there's some stress involved, and they're leaving friends and very close family, so it's hard on them.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and you guys, they have a home in Arlington, and they're transitioning out, so moved in with Danielle's parents in Edmonds for a few months here before they go, and just a lot of transition. And your kids are rock stars. They came over and had dinner with us about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and their kids are just fantastic. So as they're hanging around lunch today and stuff, I hope you guys get a chance to talk with them.
Yeah, another thing that really awesome resource that I like to plug is called Window on the World. And it's like a prayer guide for kids, and it talks about unreached people groups and parts of the world that don't have the gospel, and we've used that for many years, and it just gives them a really broad, kind of bigger view of the world, and so that's been a really helpful resource as well. Cool. For our family.
Yeah, cool. So you guys have been kind of on the missions track with short-term stuff and kind of put a toe in the water here and there. How did you, once you decided to do something more aggressive, why Cambodia? How did it become Cambodia?
Is that me?
Yeah, I think that's you.
Yeah, so we were serving in Malawi and definitely enjoyed it. Loved the people there, building relationships, and it was great. And then even an opportunity came up to where we could go full time and not really have to worry too much about the fundraising and all of that. But at the same time, God was still working in us specifically with unreached people groups. So an unreached people group is just a group of people where there's not a sustainable movement of the gospel. And sustainable in the sense that the indigenous people could move it without some assistance from missionaries. And for us, we believe that, if the indigenous people can move it forward, they should be doing it. But there's a need for pioneer missionaries. And so we felt called to that. It's throughout the Bible, and I just want to share with you in Romans 10, 14 and 15. This is just one of the many verses that kind of God has put on our hearts and been a part of our calling. In Romans 10, 14 and 15, it says, "How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in him whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? And how are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news." So someone needs to be sent. Someone needs to go, and in order for the gospel to move forward, someone needs to go. And that was just something that God had put on our hearts. And even though we had this opportunity to serve in Malawi, it was considered a reached nation, and our desire was to stay there and continue working, but we decided that we need to step back and see why is God putting this on our hearts. And in the meantime, we took a class called Perspectives. And another plug that I would highly recommend if you ever have an opportunity to take this class, is a very intense class on world missions, and very much about the unreached. So we took this class, I think, 3 years ago, and during that time, we're like, yeah, we need to go, and we need to go to the unreached. So we started pursuing opportunities in that area. And the first place we looked was to serve with the Christian Missionary Alliance. We weren't really sure if that was an opportunity for us, but we just kept through the process. And because the Christian Missionary Alliance does a lot of focus on unreached people groups. So during that process, they actually gave us 3 different positions that we were looking at, one in the Middle East, one in Indonesia, and one in Cambodia. And looking at the one and they put us in contact with all the field directors there, all the missionaries, and we got to learn more about the positions. But God really, just something about Cambodia, could see that God had really been preparing us for it. So the work that we're going to be doing in Cambodia is very similar to some stuff that we've done with Children of the Nations and stuff that just God has been preparing us for during the last 10 years. And so it put us in contact with Cambodia, and it's just really feel that that's the place where we need to be. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk a little more generally about like how we arrived at missions and wanting to move internationally. Like Todd mentioned, it was something that we had a heart and a passion for, but I think when I look back, we got really comfortable in life in America, and I think that maybe we had, or I personally had, a really like selfish view of kind of missions, like, oh, it's exciting, it's adventurous, and I want to do something great and amazing and be impressive. And looking back, I think because it was like kind of a self-seeking, selfish approach, I think that maybe because of that, I wasn't willing to make the sacrifice and to kind of lay down what it would actually mean to go, which we were comfortable and living close to family and, buying into like our kids need museums and opportunities and they need to live near friends and just all those things. I think that we sort of put it on the back burner because of that. And so I think that for me, it's been a process of having a lower posture towards Jesus and a more humble posture and saying that, well, it's really not about me. And I feel like he's shifted my approach to moving and reaching the lost and being in Cambodia to more about him. And when it's about him, I'm willing to pay any price or lay down anything because he's worthy of that. And so though I have a heart for the lost and I have a burden for the Vietnamese in Cambodia to know Jesus, it's really about my relationship with Jesus and being at a place of surrender and obedience to what he's called us to. And I think for me, it reached like a critical point where I was just super restless. Even though I want to be comfortable, life here is pretty predictable and comfortable and fun, and like we get lots of opportunities. There was a lot of restlessness in that because we weren't willing to walk in laying that down, and it's not comfortable, really, when you're not walking in God's will for your life. So I think that sort of maybe finally through like what Todd mentioned with perspectives, and I also as a mom, so I think that for me, I was feeling pretty like spent and self-sacrificing in that regard. As those of you that are moms know that it's not an easy task. And so for me, I think internally it was kind of like, I'm supposed to like go and spend myself even more for more people and exhaust myself and give of my resources and time and energy. And so a couple years ago, God gave me the verse in Isaiah. It's Isaiah 58, 11 and 12. And see if I can say it without botching it. And the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your desires in scorched places and make your bones strong. You will be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters do not fail. And a couple of years ago, God gave me that promise when we were headed into bringing our son home, that just asking me, like, will you spend yourself till you're like exhausted? And it's God that fills us back up. And it was just a promise to me that that he's going to give me the energy and the resources and the passion and love to be able to do that. So really ever since that verse has kind of been like my grounding factor that, so I think those are some of the things that are part of our journey, just like comfort versus feeling restless. And so, yeah.
With that, and that idea of just being humble and going and serving, not because this is going to be a great adventure, not because you're going to be famous, not because but just because it's the right thing to do and God is asking you to do it. I was hanging out with you guys this week, and you had mentioned that someone had told you there were three, if there were three things you could do, and as a missionary, you'd be uber successful, and it was kind of a low bar.
First term, yeah.
Yeah, so if your first term in missions, can you share with them what those were?
Yeah, this was someone who had been on the field in the Middle East, and they were saying, in the first term, if you can love those around you well, keep your faith, and stay married, it will be a successful first term. So we're aiming for that.
Yeah. You got to set your sights appropriately. Okay, so you guys, you're going to Cambodia, not so much to serve the Cambodians, but actually to serve the Vietnamese, which, can I just point out, so when they go and do this, they have to learn Cambodian. They also have to learn Vietnamese. So they have to learn both languages. And as of a couple days ago, you guys were going to learn which one first? Vietnamese. Okay. So what is the plan? What are you going to be, can you tell us more specifically what you're going to be doing with the Vietnamese there?
Well, yeah, you mentioning the language part, I think, is also something I forgot to mention with our journey towards missions, is that we're both teachers. We obviously don't have a seminary degree or anything like that. And so just, I think we also maybe bought into that idea, like, well, we're not like super holy, like saint-like people, like we're
like
pretty
pastors.
messy. Exactly.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah. So I think that was also part of our journey, is people speaking into our lives. And you mentioned like the network in the Northwest, like that's been a huge part, like of them saying like, you're called, like Absolutely. It doesn't matter that you didn't go to seminary, like you're called and God has a story that he wants you to be a part of. So that's a big part of it. And you mentioning like learning the Vietnamese just reminded me of how like inadequate and ill-equipped we feel, just for any of you that think we are. I'll dispel that right now.
Well, let me jump in there though. I mean, yes, you're not seminary trained. Yeah, you haven't been in full-time ministry and stuff, but what you're going to do is in the realm of education and really serving Vietnamese kids. And that is what you've been training for in some regards, way more than those of us that do what I do. So the fit for you guys on this seems to be pretty extraordinary. And so, yeah, tell us more about what you're doing.
Yeah, so we will be working with the Vietnamese that are in Cambodia. There's over 800,000 Vietnamese in Cambodia.
And you guys thought there were a lot of Vietnamese in our church.
Yeah. And they are the largest unreached people group in Cambodia. So less than 0.2% are evangelical Christian, which means they could go through their whole life and never hear anything about Jesus. So there is definitely a need for pioneering missions in Cambodia and with the Vietnamese specifically. And right now there are not a lot of people working with them. So about 25 years ago, the Vietnamese CMA church set up some schools called the New Hope Schools. And the desire and vision was that these schools would be a way to move the gospel forward and share with the families of the children that go there. And over the time, that vision was kind of lost. They still are run by the Vietnamese church, and they're Christian. They get the Bible, but there's not really vision. That vision is not really moving forward. And there's a disconnect between the church and the schools. And so our job is to come in, we're not going to teach, so we will not be teaching, but we'll be working with teachers, maybe once in a while doing a little training or something, but our main focus is going to be on discipleship. So we will be discipling the teachers and the staff and hopes of training them so that they can disciple the families, who we will also be building relationships with the families and the staff, and also working with the pastors and training them to do the same, and trying to bring them more, get them more connected, and just realign that vision, because it's a great opportunity to reach so many in that city. So yeah, we'll be there learning 2 languages. So currently, Danielle knows a little bit of Spanish, but that's not going to help us. And I only know 1 language, and not very well. So yeah, we need to learn 2 languages, and we are starting with Vietnamese, which will be a challenge because they need to find someone to teach us Vietnamese in Cambodia.
Yeah, I want to paint a little more of a picture for you of the Vietnamese in Cambodia. They're very marginalized and underprivileged, and they're very segregated against the Khmer. Those are the Cambodian people. They don't like them. They don't interact with them. They're not very assimilated into Cambodian society. A lot of them, most of them probably don't even speak Khmer. They just speak Vietnamese, and this means that they're not able to have citizenship in Vietnam or in Cambodia, so they really don't have a home country, and as you can imagine, this means that they have access to very little resources or education or anything like that. And so another aim of these schools is they learn Khmer, and so they're able to hopefully assimilate and become more a part of Cambodian society, and hopefully be able to get papers, go on in their education. So it's really kind of a holistic approach. It's not just to give them the gospel, but it's also to meet some of their physical needs. And also, as you probably know, trafficking is a huge issue in Southeast Asia. And so when we were just there in April, this was super heavy on my heart. Being there, I hadn't been there before, and I knew that it was very prevalent, but seeing it firsthand was really super heavy for me. And I was kind of grappling with, like, we need to come and fight this. Like, what are we doing? And so someone that has been there for a long time explained to me that when you change the values and the vision of a community, you are combating all of that. A lot of these, so they did a study about 10, 12 years ago, and they found that 1 in 4 Vietnamese children and girls were being trafficked, because I mentioned they're very marginalized, and that's who would be targeted for that. But among the New Hope schools, it's 1 in 100. And so that made me really excited for some of the other byproducts of this work, because we're placing value on these kids. Life is valued, and so I think that there's a lot of transformational development when the gospel comes into a community and changes people's lives. Their values and their vision change, and it changes everything. Education, things like trafficking, all the socioeconomic things. So I think that we're excited because what we did in Malawi was very holistic and met a lot of physical needs, but also shared the gospel. And so we're really excited for how, like you mentioned, how God kind of prepared us for that, and we can see how this is kind of what he was leading us to and preparing us for. A lot of them live on boats. They're starting to get away from that. The government really wants to have control over them. So when we were there, they were telling us that the government's forcing them off the boats, and they're fishermen. So that's a problem. One of the schools is on a boat.
Yeah, we've got.
I think
James,
there's
do we have
probably a
that
picture.
That's a school, guys.
Yeah, so both of those boats are schools. So, I mean, it sounds cool, looks cool to have school on a boat, but it's not. I almost fell in walking across that plank, and it's really not a good condition. It's not a place where they should be having school, and that's actually one of the things that we'll be working on. Hopefully soon we can find another place for them to have this school. There's actually 4 separate schools that we will work with, and the other 3 all meet inside a church.
Okay.
And I didn't mention one more thing. Spiritually, obviously there's a lot of darkness, and as soon as I was there, it was kind of like, really heavy. So they're religious-wise, they're predominantly Buddhist, but it was described to us as like an onion. So they're Buddhist on the outside, but as soon as you peel that back, it's all animism, which if you're not familiar with animism, it's spirit worship of all sorts and kinds. It could be spirit worship of trees or ancestor worship. A lot of them have spirit houses where they feed the spirits to make sure and keep them happy. So there is a lot of spiritual darkness, and you can see that brings oppression, and Jesus brings light. And so we're super excited that we get to be just a little glimmer and piece of that light into a dark place.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think about the reality, too, of you guys teaching them the language that they're going to need to be able to assimilate into the culture and get jobs and get higher education and all of that. And all of that working together is so beautiful. And this is what we've been doing in Haiti. Yes, we're empowering the Haitian church to share Jesus with them, but we're also providing jobs and health and things that are sustainable for them over the long haul, because they're in deep stuff. The poverty and the lack of education and all of that. So it's so cool to see somebody going with a target, completely different part of the world, to basically do the same kind of thing in a totally different culture. What has it been like for you guys as you're preparing to go? Once you've made this decision to do this, yeah, what's it been like?
Yeah, we actually found out just February that we're going. So we were a little shocked. We had our final interview in Colorado Springs, where the CMA national office is, and we thought, they said, okay, we want to send you. And we're like, okay, good. And then we were thinking, okay, we're gonna have like a year and a half to prepare. And like, we want you to go in August. And and Danielle talked about comfort. We were comfortable. And since February, we've been unpacking that comfort, and it has not been very comfortable. So immediately, we didn't like push back. We're just like, okay, let's go. We'll be ready. But it's been challenging. It's been a lot of trips to Goodwill and a lot of trips to the dump. So we've gotten out of our house almost completely, and we're actually very thankful for Danielle's wonderful parents who have let us move in with them as we get our house ready to rent. So we're living in Edmonds now. Thank you very much. But it's been a little chaotic, and it's been a little stressful for the kids, just having, they're getting rid of their stuff too, but it's been all right. God has definitely shown up and provided for us, but we will be leaving July 30th to Cambodia. Before that, we go to, actually a week from tomorrow, we will fly to Orlando, where we will be commissioned, and then straight from Orlando to Toronto, where we have a month-long training on language and culture acquisition. So, and also we get to take our kids, and they have a whole program for them. So we have felt very well taken care of and blessed through the whole process, but it's going quickly.
Yeah. So, hey, can I borrow your bulletin? Thank you. I'll give it back. So as we've talked about, okay, we're kind of in the beginning stages of getting to know you guys, and to be honest with you, I can really foresee a partnership with them down the road as we continue to track what's going on and maybe send a short-term team to you guys to help with all kinds of really cool stuff. But that's premature. So for now, we've talked about how can Brookview support you? And kind of what we've landed on is inside of your bulletin, there's two things. One is this card right here. And I would just encourage you guys to put this somewhere where you would see it. If this is stirring you and you feel excited about this, put this somewhere where you'll see it and pray for these guys. This is not going to be an easy journey for their family and for their kids and all of that. And so just the constant prayers. And then the other thing is that there's this smaller one here, And if you fill that out, put your name on there and your email address, drop it in the offering when it goes by later. I'm going to give those to these guys, and you'll be added to their contact list. So whatever it is that they're needing or whatever's happening with them, the updates, all of that stuff, you guys would be on their contact list to be getting all of that information. And then you can follow along, and you can, outside of what Brookview is doing to support them, you can do whatever you sense God calling you to do. So.
Yeah, the support, I know that we don't know any of you personally, but the support just from the greater church body has been a huge blessing to our family. We've been at a few different churches and sharing, and it's not just Smoky Point, our church, that's sending us. And so we really, honestly, truly appreciate the prayer and just knowing that you're kind of cheering us on, and like you mentioned, it's hard, and so just feeling that support and from God's body is really a huge blessing, more than maybe you would think or realize. So I just want to make sure that I share that.
We were hanging out the other night, and Danielle just said, we're getting emails from people saying we're praying for you, or we're rooting for you, or we want to help you in this way, or whatever, from people they don't necessarily know, from not even their home church. And that's a huge encouraging thing. And I think about when Jen and I started Brookview years ago. We moved down here from Bellingham, and we didn't have to learn a new language. Well, we kind of had to learn a new language. Seattle's different than Bellingham. But there were times where it just felt really lonely. And to have our friends from Bellingham and people that we knew just say, hey, we're praying for you, or check in with us and say, how's it going, or is there anything we can do to help you, was really a big deal for us to not feel alone in it. And so they're welcoming that. And once they get in contact with you, you'll know how to contact them back. So.
Yeah, it has been just a real blessing. You probably didn't even know you were sending out any missionaries this year, but you are a part of sending us. It's not just Smoky Point Community Church, it's the whole network of churches. And that has been a huge, huge support to us, and just a great blessing and encouragement as we prepare to go. So we thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, and I'm looking forward to the potential of a much stronger ongoing partnership with you guys in the years to come too. So it's really cool. A lot of times when we're interested in partnering with somebody that's doing missions, they're already there. So in order to even go meet them and get to know them, we have to fly where they are, and it's really expensive and really time consuming. You guys haven't left yet, and you're here, and so this is really a cool opportunity for us too. So. Here's what I want to do. I want to pray for these guys. This is a big deal, and it's a big thing that's happening for them and their kids, and potentially for the Vietnamese people in Cambodia. So what I'd like to do is invite any of you that would like to come up and kind of surround them, and we'll just kind of lay hands on you guys and pray. And then, Steph, you can just grab one of these microphones. Awesome. And then if you're not going to come up, that's totally fine. If you feel like it, you could extend a hand in support of this, and it's almost like you're putting a hand on them. And if your arm gets tired, switch hands. And if you guys are laying hands on these guys, here's one rule: please don't lean on them. You start off and you're fine, and then you get tired and you start leaning, and pretty soon they can't even bear the weight. So, all right.
Jesus, thank you for preaching to us today through the story of your faithfulness and your goodness in the lives of this family that you've commissioned to do your work. I thank you for the story. They started out talking about how you've challenged them and been growing them through their whole lives, through their whole relationships with each other, and bringing their kids into their family. And I just thank you that this is a continuation of that same work you've been doing in them as people and as a family. Thank you that you are the thing that is steady. You are the one who remains through every transition. That was clear through their story, God, that every transition, you are the through line, the thing that keeps them going and together. I ask that you continue to grow that desire in them for this work that you have placed on their hearts. I loved when they talked about the changing of their desire and how they wanted to stay in what they were doing, and how you are blessing and pouring out the people around them in Malawi. And now I am so excited, God, that you get to do the same work through them in another place. and with new people. God, I just ask that you fill up their lives and that you continue that cycle of guiding them to pour themselves out over the people in Cambodia, over the Vietnamese people there, and then filling them back up. And I pray that over each of them individually and their family as a whole. God, you are so faithful, and I thank you that we get to see a little bit of that faithfulness through this next journey. God, I ask that you will speak through them, you will love through them, and give them the ability to see the people in Cambodia through your eyes, and keep that vision clear for them in the middle of a spiritually dark place, because we know you are going. You are going to Cambodia, and you are going to pour yourself out onto the people there and onto the kids in these schools. And what an honor and what a blessing for the Jorgenson family to be a part of that. I thank you that they will go and they will be known by your name. They will be known as people that are called by Jesus, and that they will share that love with those around them. God, I just pray your security and your blessing over them, your safety, not a safety that they would recognize in an unsafe place. In the name of Jesus, I just call down blessing and love and honor on this family as they honor the call that you have placed on them. Jesus, you are awesome, and we love you back. Amen.
Amen. Amen.